Let's talk about the early days of Nike. Nike was founded in 1972, but before Nike was Nike, the company was called Blue Ribbon Sports, and that company was actually founded in 1964. Blue Ribbon Sports was named after Pabst Blue Ribbon beer, and the company was founded by Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman. In the 60s, Phil Knight was traveling to Japan, and what he was doing was trying to form an arrangement between himself and Onitsuka Tiger, and he wanted to import their shoes and sell them at track meets in the United States. So he was flying out to Japan, and he was actually at the airport waiting for his flight, and he had a PBR. And he was sipping his beer, thinking about how he was going to convince the factory owner in Japan to let him have an exclusive deal to sell their shoes in the United States. So he goes to Japan, he goes into this guy's office, and the guy says to him, "Phil, who do you represent?" And the first thing that he thought of was his Blue Ribbon beer that he had at the airport, and so he blurted out Blue Ribbon Sports. And that was the name of Nike before Nike. Come over here and have a look at these 2003 Zoom Air Angus SBs that were inspired by PBR. You can see right away that the shoes are red, white, and blue, just like the PBR logo. These shoes come with a great story. So we know that they were a ripoff of PBR, and you can see on the back heel, there's actually a logo of the Blue Ribbon that matches the PBR logo to a T. When these shoes were released, they were released at the same time as the Heineken Dunk SB. Heineken actually sued Nike over those shoes, and out of fear of a lawsuit from PBR, Nike actually recalled these Zoom Air Anguses, so they were only available for sale for a very limited time before they were pulled away from the shelves. So you can see that the shoes really match up with this can perfectly, and you gotta love them. In 2003, Nike SB was just 2 years old, and it was way before any hype over SB shoes. We all know that the Dunks are the most popular, but in the early years of Nike SBs, there were Anguses like these. Also, URLs is another common early shoe. There's the Zoom Tray, the Zoom FC. Basically, Nike was toying with a bunch of their different silhouettes to try to come up with the next great dunk. The Zoom Air Angus really only lasted a few years. There was a television commercial just for these shoes that had them hanging on meat hooks as if they were in a butcher shop, like an Angus, which is the inspiration for the shoe. So from these red, white, and blue Zoom Air Anguses, let's talk about a couple other red, white, and blue shoes from the early days of Nike and Onitsuka Tiger. And we're going to look at this pair of Cortezes, which is very reminiscent of the shoe that Forrest Gump wore in the Amazing movie. These shoes were actually a ripoff of this shoe, which is known as the Corsair. I'm going to try to stack it right here. Look at how similar the uppers and the midsoles are of these shoes. And when you turn them over, you can see that the outsoles are pretty much exactly the same. So the Asics Onitsuka Tiger shoe right here is one of just 800, and it's called the Corsair. The Cortez by Nike was one of the earliest Nike shoes, and it's called Cortez, incidentally, because of Corsair. But of course, Nike has this legendary story of how they wanted to call this shoe the Aztec. But at the time, there was a pair of Adidas called the Aztecs. So Nike thought that Hernando Cortez conquered the Aztecs, so they're going to name their shoe the Cortez. And that's how this shoe got its name. You gotta love this shoe. You gotta love where it all began. These are a pair of Onitsuka Tiger shoes just like the ones that Phil Knight was bringing in and selling at track meets in the United States. It's been a pleasure to introduce you to the Zoom Air Angus and talk a little bit about the Blue Ribbon Sports days.